What, you have a podcast?
Really?
Computer, show the historical documents.
It's just time for a theocratic monarchy. King Trump, for life. Let's go.
I said, no, Sean, I'm going to be a dictator. I said that.
So there's this thing going on in social media. I see it a lot, and it's also happening in polls. And, the polls and social media are kind of in agreement that the youth really doesn't like Biden. And Muslim Americans right now really don't like Biden. And the amazing part is, social media is taking the polls that say that, and I believe them. I take them at their word. I take the polls at their word, because also on social media, you are seeing Muslim Americans and young Americans basically just trashing Biden constantly. And these aren't Republican young people. These are very, very liberal people. Flirted with Bernie Sanders, probably would vote for an out and open socialist if given the opportunity. And they're just crapping on Biden constantly for a myriad of reasons. When it comes to the Muslim American thing, though, the thing that I see on social media that is really, to me, offensive is this notion that, oh, don't you know that Trump would be way worse? It's so stupid of you. You're cutting your nose to spite your face. It's the biggest stupid thing in history. Like, people are talking down to these Muslim Americans who are like, I'm sorry, I'm not going to do it. I don't get that. I think that's very stupid on our part. Anybody who's going and attacking a Muslim American and is like, why don't you vote for Biden? Don't you understand? Don't you get it? Like, Trump's going to be way worse. He wants to do a Muslim ban and he'll just let genocide happen. Like, he won't even pretend to put restraints on any of it. Like that's all true. It is true. It is a 100% fact. Donald Trump, as president of the United States, under these circumstances, would be 100,000 times worse. It is a fact. I don't think you could argue it. If you're Muslim American, you have to acknowledge, yes, Trump will be worse. But is it really our job? Is it yours or mine to go to these same Muslim Americans on social media and berate them? Because I think that's doing it a disservice. I will vote for Biden or whoever the Democratic nominee happens to be. Given his age, you have to add that caveat, right? Biden is infinitely better than any Republican. Nikki Haley, DeSantis, Tim Scott, doesn't matter. Biden, any Democrat, is 100 times better than any Republican. They are all spineless cowards, every single one of them. So I will vote for Biden for strictly the one reason of, I'm pretty sure if he's not going to go fight for women's rights, which so far he has not, and that's pissed me off. You know what he won't do? He will not nominate, if a seat opens up, he will not nominate a anti-abortion justice to the Supreme Court. He won't make the problem worse. Okay? If you elect Donald Trump, that's going to happen. Okay? Or any Republican. If, Sotomayor, Kagan, anything happens to any of the three remaining liberal justices, make no mistake, they will be replaced with a hardline anti-abortion conservative and set us back even further. So, Biden's not going to do that. He's not. He's already proven he won't, because he's got Miss Jackson. And she's definitely, left of everyone else on that board. So I'll take it. And yes, it's easy for me to acknowledge that the Middle East is a shit show right now. And Trump will make it worse. He will either ignore it, which actually might be a better outcome, but more people will die that way. He could get completely involved, or he could just nuke it, because he's played with that idea in the past. This is a man who has absolutely no sense of right or wrong. He just wants the problem to go away, and if he's convinced himself, or someone has convinced him, that, just dropping a nuke on Tel Aviv totally solves this problem, sir. He will do it. It will be bad, right? But at the same time, I have no skin in this game, other than I am an American. That's just it. I am not Muslim. I don't have any Muslim family members. I have no family or friends that live in the Middle East, Israel, Gaza, the West Bank, Egypt, anywhere. None. I am sitting in a place of privilege being able to say, you guys should vote for Biden. However, I am not going to do that. I am not going to sit here and tell anyone who to vote for. I'm going to say, hey, Trump will make whatever your issue is way fucking worse. Okay, even if you're a Republican and you're like, I want the border fixed. Trust me, Trump's not your guy. Okay, he's going to make it worse, not better. Sorry, it's just true. He's going to make it worse. So that's it. I'm going to say that. And I will say, under Trump, there's a high probability that democracy's done, that it's dead. Now, I've heard this strange argument. I heard it first. There was an Atlantic piece, I think it was The Atlantic, who interviewed some random Republican. They had seen at several things, and he said he was for Nikki Haley, but then just recently he decided, no, I want Trump. And the reason he wants Trump is because he wants the system broken because he thinks it deserves to be broken, and that Trump will be the man to rebuild it. Now, first off, Trump is not the man to do anything, really. He'll make great worm food. That's about all he's good for. So he's not going to do it. And even if he did, seriously, why would you want a man who shits on a golden toilet to decide the new constitution, if we had one, of the United States, or to be the moral arbiter of our futures? That's a terrible decision. It's horrible. But I would argue that if Trump gets in and he breaks the system, because there are these lefties, some of these lefties, they believe that the system should be broken. Fine. Great. You have to understand, if you're left of center, there is no one on your side in a position to pick up the pieces and rebuild this. We do not have an FDR. We do not have a Bernie Sanders is not in position to seize the reins of government and drive us into that wonderful socialist future you're hoping for. You cannot predict how this is going to be. The people that are going to break the system would be Trump and the people that back him. Who are the people that back him? Techno-authoritarians, okay? Who are the people most likely to rebuild America in their image? Right now, it's not the Democrats. It's certainly not any socialists, communists, or anybody left. You are going to get Zuckerberg, Musk, Jamie Dimon, the bankers, CEOs. Those are the people currently who are ready to pounce and take control of this country. They're ready. They have the means. They have the opportunity if Trump gets in. This is what they've been waiting for. Okay? You have social media moguls like Zuckerberg and Musk who can drive the conversation any way they want. They can silence the people they don't want. It's happened to me many times before, especially with Zuckerberg. His AI sucks and doesn't know what satire is, but regardless, these people can ban whoever they want, pump up whoever they want, control whatever they want. Microsoft owns NBC. That's the MS and NBC, okay? Comcast has a lot of control. The guy who owns the Washington Post is Jeff Bezos. The New York Times is owned by a hedge fund conglomerate that is pushing it more and more to the right. There is no liberal army, figuratively or literally, that can come in and pick up the pieces of a broken America. We're not in a position to do that. The DSA is not ready to take over. So if Trump comes in and breaks it, the people that put him in that position to break it are going to be the ones who get to pick up the pieces. So I would urge you, look, if you think the system should be broken, I'm not going to argue with you. I agree. But you have to understand these things, there are too many moving parts. You do not know who is going to win. And right now, the likelihood is the people with all the money and influence, Wall Street and Silicon Valley, are going to be the ones to come together and rebuild this country. Okay? If you're pissed off that a bunch of rich white landowners and slave owners wrote the Constitution the first time, wait until you see what Zuckerberg and Musk have in store for you. Okay? So I would just caution that. If you're all about breaking the system and you're going to vote for Trump because that's the quickest way to do it, okay, fine. but know what you're getting into. And know that your side, the side that you want, the things that you want, are not going to be represented by these people. Okay, that's the end of that rant. Let's get on to the next one. So something I saw yesterday, and you can find it on the Bulwarks podcast with Charlie Sykes. He did an episode yesterday. That's actually not, I'm just using that for setup here. That's not actually what I want to talk about. But he does have somebody who's an expert on artificial intelligence and the role it's going to play in our future. And both of them expressed a major concern about this year's election and beyond. You know, you have this fear that, and we've already seen it, you know, a couple years ago, I think, Nancy Pelosi gave a speech, and these guys came out, and they didn't even really do a good job at AI. They just played the video back slower, so it sounded like she was slurring her words and appeared, you know, either drunk or, you know, very, very elderly kind of a deal. And it was made in bad faith and put out there. So this is already starting to happen. There was also apparently a President Biden faked AI robocall that was trying to tell people, don't go vote tomorrow, vote the next day or something like that, you know, to screw things up. That's being investigated right now as to who is behind that. Obviously somebody who doesn't like Biden. So we have this possibility of AI fears and everything else. With that in mind, I saw a video yesterday of Biden giving a press conference, and it wasn't really a press conference. He gave a speech for about 15, 20 minutes. And then the last 2-3 minutes, he answered questions. He said he wasn't going to, but he stood at the podium and did anyway. Now, in typical fashion, Biden spoke slowly. He did, you could tell he was dealing with his stutter. I don't know what it was, but he seemed tired. He seemed like he didn't want to be there and whatever. He was reading off a teleprompter. We all know he doesn't look particularly great at these all the time, so I wasn't really concerned with that. However, I did see this one part of the video where a lot of people on both the left and right took advantage of it and said, oh my God, he looks terrible. And at first, my initial thought was, well, that's AI. I've never seen him that bad, right? But then I found the original video. You can look up on MSNBC's YouTube page. They have the entire Biden speech that he gave. And then, you know, I did watch the entire thing. And it wasn't great, but the Q&A question's pretty bad. So here you go.
It all goes to the question of American power. It all goes to, does America keep its word? Does America move forward? There is some movement, and I don't want to, well, maybe choose my words. There's some movement. There's been a response from there's been a response from the opposition, but
Biden should never have run for a second term. He never should have run for a second term. He kind of implied it the first time around. That's why a lot of people went along with it. He was seen as the perfect person to foil Trump. Trump even acknowledged this. That's why he spent so much of his political capital on the whole Ukraine thing, trying to dig up and create fakeness. This is why there's such a focus on Hunter Biden, right? It's like anything we can get to destroy this guy, because ultimately, I think Trump's biggest weakness is that he cannot really connect to the average American very well, and he doesn't have empathy at all. And I think he's aware of that, and I think he knows that if there's a candidate who can come in and at least sell the idea that they are pro working guy and look, I'm empathetic and I can be emotional in all the good ways, that's kryptonite to Trump. So he knows it. So in 2020, I said he's the right guy for now, because again, the country was also in a mood for, okay, this crazy shit has to stop. We need a return to normalcy. So I say the 2020 campaign was the return to normalcy year. You know, that was the overarching theme. The whole country was like, no, we're done with this. It was a nice experiment. We're beyond it now. We know what not to do in the future. And that was all done with the implication that Biden would not run. Now, he never came out and said it, but it was heavily implied both by him and surrogates on the campaign trail. I have never thought that he was the right guy for 2024. The second I realized that Trump was not going to really be prosecuted by this attorney general, thanks Merrick Garland, and that the Senate was not going to convict to remove him from any kind of being on the ballot this time around, I knew he was going to run again, if for nothing more than to try to avoid prosecution. As soon as that happened, I realized we're no longer in the right stage. The reasons he should have never run for a second term, the political concerns are very easy. His temperament is very much don't rock the boat, don't change anything. Okay, if you bring up Supreme Court packing, regardless of all the shenanigans the Republicans have done over the years, he's like, nope, not even going to hear it. If you talk about Supreme Court reform, nope, not going to do it. If he talks about, oh, well, why don't you just, for example, there's a movement right now, or there's a group of people right now asking the president, you're in charge of all the military bases. Just say the military bases via executive order will perform abortions. And then people can just go in and have them done. And that would bypass this one state versus another BS. He won't do it. Like, he doesn't think outside of the box. He's very much in his box and he's okay there. That was good for 2020. It is not good for 2024. People have realized the pendulum has swung so far to the right that this is over. It's like, no. We need somebody in here who's a fighter, and that is not Biden. That's not the kind of fighter he is. The other concern is age, obviously. These kinds of moments are totally natural for somebody of his age, and they do not necessarily mean that he'd be bad at his job or that he would screw up in a key moment as president. And it certainly doesn't mean that the more slanderous right-wing attacks that he's being led around by his staff. It doesn't mean that. Okay, I'm sure he is still as smart as he always has been. Has he lost a couple off his fastball? Sure. It doesn't mean that. But for an election, this does not help. There will be more of these moments. There just will. Okay, it's only February. We have until November. He's going to be ramped up. The campaign is going to have no choice. Unlike last time with COVID fears, they're going to have to get him out of the basement. They're going to have to get him out in front of cameras. God forbid there's an actual debate between Trump and Biden, and he has one of these moments then. Okay? For some reason, until Donald shits himself on live television, he's going to be able to dodge the age question because Biden projects it so well. Like, Trump is loud and boisterous, and people just don't get it. Even though what he's saying is a word salad and he's mixing up Nikki Haley and Nancy Pelosi, it just doesn't come off the same way. And right now it seems like the Biden campaign is hoping for Trump to implode. And that's the exact same thing the Clinton campaign tried in 2016. It's what Nikki Haley is hoping for right now. She's not dropping out of the race, not because she actually thinks she's got a chance to win. She just wants to be the last person standing in case he has a heart attack or a stroke, or there's actually conviction and he gets locked up and put into jail, or anything to take him out that isn't them. No one's being proactive about this at all. The Justice Department sat around for 2 years before doing anything. It was absolute malpractice what they did. So since more moments like these are inevitable and AI is getting better by the minute, the only advice I can give to the Biden campaign is to stop campaigning. Pick someone, anoint someone, move on to the convention. Go have a brokered convention. Let the delegates decide, because this isn't going to work. Like I said, at no point is this going to get better. Okay? It's only going to get worse. There are just going to be more and more and more of these moments. And with AI, it's going to get harder and harder to tell which ones are the real ones and the fake ones. And that's for somebody like me who's actually paying attention. I mean, I saw the video clip on social media, and then I went and looked up the actual speech so I could see the entire thing in context. It wasn't, I mean, yes, it's cherry picked. It's only 30 seconds of a 20-minute video, but it's still not good. You would hope that the leader of the free world could remain consistent and coherent for 20 straight minutes, but that's just not what is happening right now. So I don't think this is going to work. I think it's just going to get worse. And again, what we're all hoping for right now is that something from the outside happens to Donald Trump to take him out, because Merrick Garland's not doing it. Jack Smith he's not, even if he gets convicted, he's not going to jail right away. Okay, he's going to be out on the campaign trail. The idea that, a conviction will actually change anything, I don't buy for 1 second. We're hoping he craps himself on TV and has a stroke, a heart attack, something. It's just too much. I would never just be like, well, we're going to roll the dice and hope for the best on authoritarianism, on fascism. I mean, seriously, this was like the Germans, they allowed Hitler to become chancellor because they thought, just like some of us in 2016, the position of power will calm him down. No, we can't do that. So I really hate that I have to talk about this. I imagine it's not going to be the only time I'm talking about it. But hey, on the upside, the opposition is also doing great. The other day, Mark Thiessen, who's a righty, wrote in the Washington Post an op-ed, and basically he said that it's good that the Republicans rejected that horrible border deal that they themselves negotiated. It follows a lot of talking points. Basically, his first argument is that, well, the president won't enforce the laws anyway, so who cares? Which is basically what Speaker Johnson said like 2 days ago during his press conference before he, kicked himself in the nuts several times. And his next argument is that, well, Biden's packed the courts with all these liberal justices and it's not fair. We won't get our way. Which is another, right-wing talking point that somehow every judge in this country is a lefty lunatic. But basically he's suggesting that if they pass this bill now and then hypothetically Trump or another Republican gets elected and they want to close the border like Biden says he wants to, that there's verbiage in the law that could be construed a certain way by a certain liberal judge to actually tell the president, no, you have to keep the border open. Open borders, yes. Yeah, whatever. So that's his argument, and so he doesn't care for it much, and he just wants a completely shut down, closed border. I mentioned yesterday you would lose $2 billion per day just in trade alone if you did that. So I don't think that's something he really thinks about. And then there was another piece in The Nation. I destroyed my notes. Deleted them, so I don't have her name in front of me. I think it's her. I think her name's Gabby. But she was talking about how Biden is basically going about this border deal as if he were a Republican, and he's doing it and he's risking alienating his own base, which I believe is very true. A lot of Democrats don't like this border deal as it was written, and they really don't like that Biden was so eager to do this. This is another way, there were a few jokes before, the Democratic primary in 2020 that said, Biden shouldn't run as a Democrat. He's not one. He should run as a Republican against Trump, because at least then he's being truthful. And I agree. I don't think Biden's really a very good Democrat. I don't think he's not left of center. He's right of center. He's Bush all over again. Bush was not a hardcore righty. His party was, but he actually was not. I mean, for fuck's sake, he has come out in support of the Muslim community a hell of a lot more than Biden has recently. He tried to get a border deal done, and then the Republican Party, went against him on that. So, I always considered Cheney to be the far right winger, and the rest of his cabinet was obviously filled with very, very strong right wingers. But Biden's not a Democrat, and he's who we got. I mean, whatever. But he is risking alienating a lot of people. This border deal isn't that great. Okay, one of the parts of the deal is that it funds for more detention centers, to allow for more family separation, to allow for more kids in cages, which I'm vehemently against. And for me, I do kind of agree with him. I'm worried about what happens with the next president who's not Biden. Because while Biden isn't so keen on the whole family separation thing, we know who is. And he's been in office before, and he did it. And this would actually make it a lot easier for him to do that. And I'm not so... I don't believe in this the liberals own the courts bullshit that Thiessen was writing about. Like, conservatives do, very clearly. And they're much better at court shopping than liberals do. So they would take it to the Texas courts and they would get their way. I don't see it. I think it's a horrible idea. The only part of it, too, that is even remotely good, that is kind of throwing the left a bone, which also helps the right, is it fully funds the judiciary system there. You know, it hires more judges, it hires more lawyers to help with that, and get the whole asylum process, you know, sped up, which is a huge problem. There's this horrific yet also great piece by John Oliver. He did a thing on the border, and he was talking about how there are literal infants who don't have parents or family, right? They were handed off to a stranger. They crossed the border with it. The stranger's like, this baby is not mine. And you have a literal toddler in court before a judge. And they have a lawyer who's supposed to argue on their behalf that they should stay here and that they have no family or anything. They have no connection. They're just a baby that showed up on the border, or a baby that showed up on America's doorstep. What the hell do you do with that? And, you know, the even sadder fact that there are not enough lawyers to do that job. There aren't enough judges to do that job. There's like 2 judges or some shit who deal with the infants who just arrive. You know, what the hell are we supposed to do with them? You know, this is a very serious problem and you know, deserves our attention. And it deserves more funding than it currently gets. But, you know, that's one of the things that this bill would have done, was actually fund some of that, which, of course, that needs to happen. But the very idea that you need a court and an adjudication for, you know, a 2 or 3 year old, like, do they even know where the fuck they are? Like, seriously, they're probably terrified out of their mind. They don't know where their mother is. This is, I don't know. It's very inhumane to me. If you wanted to streamline that process, I think there should be a special carve out for like fucking toddlers and below, and be like, hey, they just showed up alone. You know, somebody down south handing them off to a stranger and be like, please get my baby to safety. And it's like, why are we even arguing what the fuck to do here? Like, isn't the right thing to do to take them in? I don't know. But the rest of the bill is very draconian. He wants to shut it down. He wants to, you know, build more camps, all this stuff. And I'm just like, I don't. You know, Biden's operating on this whole idea that he's going to win the election. That's another strange thing. Again, do I like this bill if my worst enemy had it? Okay, my worst enemy is Donald Trump. And if he had this bill, he would make things 10 times worse with it. It weaponizes a lot of what he wants. This bill is what they would write if Trump were in office and they needed to kind of work with Democrats a little bit, because it wasn't as draconian as like their HR 2 plan. But it's pretty fucking close. So, you know, I wouldn't want Trump to have these powers. I don't even really like Biden having these powers, considering what he's doing. It's a really frightening situation down there, and a lot of us don't want to give it too much attention. We like to vilify the other, and I don't agree with that either. I am a fan of open borders, in case anybody's looking, like, in case, you know, you hear that argument, oh, nobody's serious is offering open borders. Hi, I am right here. I'm saying open borders. Fuck it. Like, I don't care. I see the border closure as merely a way to exploit human beings, right? Like, nobody wants to pay farm workers, the farm hands, a reasonable wage, so we bring in immigrants. That's really what it is. You know, there's this myth that Americans don't want to do the job, and it's like, no, we do want to do the job. We don't want to do the job for no pay and no breaks. See, that's always the thing. If you go to any of these farmers, and there are a few farmers who will tell you the anecdotal story of the one time they hired, you know, the local white boys from down the street, the teenagers. They're like, yeah, they worked for about an hour and then they just quit. You know, it was just insane. They don't want to work. But these immigrants, they're really nice because they come down here and they do all the work for us, and it's fantastic. And, what they don't mention is, it's not that the Americans don't want to do the job, it's that the Americans don't want to do the job for shit pay, and they don't want to, they want to take breaks. Like, that's something the immigrants don't get to do. They don't get to take breaks. They don't get to do anything. They have to work from sunup to sundown doing a job you couldn't do for more than 15 minutes in your own backyard with some weeds by hand picking. Okay? You wouldn't do that for more than 15 minutes without taking a break. Especially in the weather some of these guys got to do. Like, it's really fucking hot during the spring and summer sometimes, especially down here in the South. So the whole, concept of the border to me is just a means of controlling human beings. It has nothing to do with the welfare state, right? You always hear that from the right. The Republicans are always like, oh, these people, they get free money and they're going to take your tax dollars and do it. Like, trust me, Ted Cruz doesn't give two flying fucks about your tax dollars. It is not some sacred cow to them. They spend it on bullshit all the time. They don't care. And besides, even if we decided to feed and house all these people, that's a drop in the bucket compared to the billions of dollars we're sending to Ukraine and Israel to fight wars or help with the genocide. So it's really nothing. I mean, we could feed and house everyone in this country for pennies if we wanted to. We just don't want to because there's this weird Protestant, you gotta work for your living and make all your stuff yourself and nobody gets a free ride bullshit that everybody believes in. If we could get rid of that part of the culture, a lot of our problems would be solved instantaneously. So it isn't that. It's a load of crap. They just open and close the border depending on whether or not they need work. And right now they kind of do. That's the weird thing. Republicans are complaining about the border being open, but right now unemployment's very low. So of course the border's open. They need workers. They need workers because Americans aren't looking for work. That's the thing. We're happy right now. We're in our place. We're happy. And none of us are looking for farm work. So of course that's where it's going to be. And as far as I'm concerned, this is all just a way to exploit workers. It's a way not to pay us. It's a way not to pay them. It's a way to just make things cheaper. And, they argue sometimes it's like, well, no American's going to pay $10 for a head of broccoli. You're right. We probably wouldn't. That's why there's this thing called subsidies. Like, we subsidize things we don't need. We subsidize profitable businesses that do not need the subsidies. Okay, you can't tell me that we couldn't subsidize Whole Foods. Like, if you go into the grocery store, in my perfect world, I know this isn't for everyone, but I would tax the hell out of processed foods like soda, candy, crackers, anything in a bag or a box, and I would take that money and then subsidize with it the Whole Foods. Okay, make it so you can go over there and buy a potato for 5 cents, buy an apple for 5 cents, and in fact, all fruits and vegetables just be a fucking nickel. Okay, if you just made it so that outside layer of your grocery store, that part with all the, fresh and mostly Whole Foods and everything, I think that should be the cheapest part of the store. I think the middle section should just be expensive as fuck to discourage it. Might help me, and certainly would help the rest of us here in this country. But, they don't want to do that. It's a whole systemic issue because then if you made the Whole Foods cheaper, well, then somebody would have to cook them. And unfortunately, everyone in this country is working. Nobody is home to cook. So that becomes an issue. It's like there's a reason why the take-home pizza is so damn popular. It's $10. You could just throw it in the oven and go, right? I mean, this is why this is happening. So if you wanted to address that, you would also have to address the, wage problem here in this country where wages aren't high enough to meet the cost of living so that two parents have to constantly work, which means the kids are the ones to do the cooking, maybe, kinda, or the parents get home really late and don't have time to actually spend time cooking. It's a whole systemic issue. It's a mess, and the border's just one cog in it. And you don't even get me started on the prison industrial complex. I mean, for fuck's sake, Walmart and McDonald's hire them. Chances are the next cheeseburger you eat was made by a prisoner. For nothing, because slave labor is very real in this country, no matter what they tell you. So this is all a very complicated issue. I urge everyone to really have an open mind about all ideas on this, okay? If your friend says open borders and you're like, oh my god, that's so fucking crazy, like okay, I get that's your initial knee-jerk reaction. It was mine the first time I heard it, right? Because you grow up in a system, you accept the system, and you actually do fight to defend it to a degree. And the first time I heard open borders, I was like, oh my God, that's fucking crazy. Same thing as abolish prisons. Oh my God, that's nuts. But for me, once that idea gets there and I think about it for a while and maybe I hear a few other people's points of view on it and I actually look into it and I'm like, I don't know if I'm 100% on board with the idea of open borders, but I'm not really hearing a lot of good arguments for why not. Like, the arguments against open borders are very fear-based. They're not statistical, right? That's not how it works. Okay? The first person to bring COVID into the United States did not come through the southern border. He came on a plane and was totally okay, right? And he landed in Seattle. So, diseases don't cross. The terrorists from 9/11, the biggest terrorist attack in the country's history, they did not come through the southern border. They were here legally. They came through normal means. Okay, so I mean, a lot of it is fear-based. It's like, oh my God, and oh my God, we'll overwhelm the welfare system and all this other stuff. It's like, dude, they don't get shit. If you're illegal, you don't get anything. So a lot of it's very fear-based. Not much of it is statistical. The statistics they usually cite are either extremely old and don't represent the current reality. But again, even the border is such a massive, massive issue. One of the things I always talk about is if you don't want Mexicans coming here, maybe we could help Mexico being the kind of place you don't want to leave. Crazy idea, I know. Maybe we can prop up some of those countries south of our own border so that people like it there and want to stay, because your average human wants to stay where they are. We don't like moving. Moving sucks. Moving is a pain in the ass. I don't even like moving across the street. If you told me I had to switch houses with my neighbor, I'd be like, fuck you, I'm not doing it. That's a lot of work. You can't tell me moving to an entirely new country where you don't speak the language and also, 50% of the population is highly critical and hates your guts. Like, you can't tell me that's something everyone wants to sign up to do. Nobody moves because they want to. The United States was populated by Europeans mostly who were under oppression by one mean or another. You have the Puritans who had to come here for religious persecution, but you had the Irish who had to come here because of famine. America was seen as a land of opportunity because, spoiler alert, there was none over in Europe. I mean, people came here because they had to. If people were fine and happy in Europe, they never would have come here. Their land, their world that they lived was so fucked up and horrible that they decided, I'm going to risk it all and go to the brand new place. I have no idea what's there for me. So I'm going to try to get through this as quickly as possible because there's a lot and I don't want this thing to be 3 hours long. So, apologies. When it comes to Biden's classified documents, the report was released yesterday by a lawyer named Hoare, who was appointed by President Trump, which should have been a red flag, but anyway, we're getting ahead of ourselves. One, yes, your notes are top secret. When I was in the Navy, it was very clear if I take notes on something, I had to get the top secret stamp that, and then my notes were then top secret. Yes, your notes need to be in an approved safe. At the end of every work day, I would take those notes, I would put them in my safe. I knew many, many people who got in trouble because they accidentally took their notes home when they shouldn't have. The second you write about a top secret thing, the thing you are writing is officially top secret or classified or whatever the hell. So everything that he wrote, yes, his notes are secret. Yes, and they train this to every single person in the military. I was in the Navy. As an E1, I was taught about all of this. So it really pisses me off that our presidents, vice presidents, and a lot of people in government apparently don't know how the fuck to do this. Pissed me off when Clinton did it. Pissed me off when Trump did it. Really pisses me off that Biden did it because I thought he knew better and also had the gift of, living through the Trump thing. You would think from 2016 to 2020 when Trump was president and all these security issues, he'd be like, maybe I should make sure my garage is not filled with shit. But he didn't, so screw him. This was also an issue when Trump revoked ex-CIA director John Brennan's security clearance. So the reason that was a bad thing, and the reason you don't revoke security clearances just all willy-nilly for no reason. Okay, ex-CIA director has built relationships with certain people. He knows things that other people just aren't going to know. And what will happen is the new CIA director or somebody else will be like, didn't John Brennan meet with so-and-so? Get him. And then he's allowed into the building. He's also allowed to go to the safe, pull out his old notes, and go over them because, it's been 5 years since he met that guy. Maybe he forgot something. So he pulls out his notes of that meeting with the guy, and he's like, oh yeah, now I remember this, and this. And he can only do that because he has a security clearance. And then because he has the security clearance, he goes to the new CIA director and he's like, hey, here's all I remember about this meeting. So when you go to meet him, you can know A, B, and C. This is a thing that happens all the fucking time. It is a good thing that all these people have security clearances. So unless somebody's an actual security risk and not just your political opponent, you leave them with their security clearance because now, hypothetically, unless his security clearance has been returned, John Brennan cannot go back. If the current CIA director or FBI director or even the president wants to talk, well, the president can, but anybody else is like, hey, we should get John Brennan in here, first they have to clear the hurdle of can he have his security clearance? That's a big deal. So that's why that was an issue when that happened. And yeah, okay. The other problem I have with Biden's notes is that his notes were classic cover your ass. This is the thing that really pisses me off. He didn't take these things because, they were sentimental, I forgot, all this other stuff. No, he wrote these notes in particular because he was opposed to certain actions in Afghanistan taken by President Obama. And he wanted to purposefully make notes, take copies, and to explain his disagreements for future reference. So that way he could be like, see, here on paper, right here, this is where I disagreed with that bad decision that Obama made. This was clear, cover your ass material. And I hate that he did that. That is the stupidest fucking thing to do. Okay? He took these notes strictly so he can make himself look better, feel better, whatever the fuck. It's dumb. It's stupid. He shouldn't have done it. I hate that he did it that way. It's not like, this was a thing, the former president of so-and-so gave me this thing. I mean, for all of Trump's fuck-ups, the few things I wouldn't have cared about, if he had taken the Kim Jong-un love letters, right? If he had taken those and been like, well, he wrote them to me, they're mine, who gives a fuck? Like, I wouldn't have given a fuck. I mean, sure, he's got to return them, and I guess if he's going to be a dick about, but I mean, I wouldn't have cared about those. But he was taking and sharing actual stuff. Now, yes, Biden wasn't sharing this stuff with anybody other than his ghostwriter, who's also not cleared for any of this shit. I never cared too much about this. Like, when it came to Biden, I never cared too much about it because the law is very clear that intent is required. Biden would have been needed to intend to do harm to, for this to be criminal. And at no point has Biden ever exuded that. Meanwhile, Trump, when he hid stuff, he lied about it. He had other people lie about it. He told them, no, it's mine, screw off. I mean, for years... That's another thing that bothers me. It took years. But for years, the National Archives are like knocking on Trump's door going, hey, could we have this shit back? Way before anything happened. This is why the argument of like, oh my God, I can't believe they raided a former president is bullshit, because it's like, dude, they gave him 2 years to just hand it to him. He didn't have to do anything. He lied so much that they finally were like, man, fuck it. Okay, go. I mean, seriously, if the cops come to your door, knock and say, hey man, we have a warrant, and you're still like, fuck you, you can't come in. Eventually, they're gonna get the big thing that knocks down your fucking door to come in. It's just, eventually it's going to happen. But anyway, there was no intent to do this. No one thought it was. I don't recall a single note or anything saying, oh my God, I can't believe Biden did this. He's such a criminal. Like, nobody was thinking that. Everyone knew this would not end in criminal prosecution, which is why I thought at the time the appointment of a special counsel to begin with was absolutely ridiculous and a fireable offense by Merrick Garland, who is the shittiest attorney general I've ever seen. Never mind that he appointed a Trump appointee Republican to investigate his own president for something that he knew and everyone knew was not criminal. It was not criminal. Nobody knew this. The attorney general could have just sent in a couple FBI guys quietly. Hey, go look at this. Yeah, okay. It would have been very clear. He could have told the FBI, okay, FBI, I need you to go investigate the president's homes. Okay. If you find evidence of criminal wrongdoing, then we can investigate. Then we could do that. But for right now, yeah, no, we all know he just forgot this shit. I mean, it wasn't he wasn't going to flaunt this shit anywhere. Okay? Come on. So, That bothers me. Yes, he should have been fired immediately. Now, another thing. Recall when Attorney General Bill Barr released the Mueller report. He didn't just do it all at once. He had a press conference. He controlled the narrative by announcing the good things first, like Trump didn't commit any crimes and he's not going to be prosecuted, and just omitted all the bad things. Garland just released this whole damn thing, apparently without any review. He had the power to omit certain things, and he did not. Now, zero lawyers would have thought this improper, given what he would have omitted would have zero to do with the actual investigation. And this is the crux of the problem. The standard operating procedure when a politician or anyone with a half-decent lawyer is being asked questions under oath is to obfuscate with, "I don't recall," or even, "I'll plead the fifth," which is not an admission of guilt. Biden did not use these statements tactically like Trump has done, or if you're old enough, both Clintons in their investigation love the "I don't recall" shit. And while last night he claimed he was so offended by some of the questions that threw him off, he also didn't do that. Like, for example, regardless of the validity of the questions being asked, there are two that really bother me. And I'm going to read this thing right here. We'll put it up on the screen. In his interview with our office, Mr. Biden's memory was worse. He did not remember when he was vice president, forgetting on the first day of the interview when his term ended. Quote, "If it was 2013, when did I stop being vice president?" Unquote. And forgetting on the second day of the interview when his term began. Quote, "In 2009, am I still vice president?" Unquote. He did not remember, even within several years, when his son Beau died. And his memory appeared hazy when describing the Afghanistan debate that was once so important to him. Among other things, he mistakenly said he, quote, "had a real difference," end quote, of opinion with General Carl Eikenberry, when in fact Eikenberry was an ally whom Mr. Biden cited approvingly in his Thanksgiving memo to President Obama. End of that. Again, I will note, neither of these questions has jack nor shit to do with the investigation and should have been stricken from the report by a competent attorney general. No one would have balked at this. A competent attorney general would have been like, "Dude, this shit has nothing to do with your investigation. Get it the hell out of this." And he would have been within his rights, within his powers. And again, nobody would have argued with this. You've seen it. If you've watched any law show with lawyers at any point, what always happens? The opposing lawyer always jumps up, "Objection, relevance," and the judge always administers a warning to the lawyer like, "Yeah, keep it on topic," right? That's what should have happened here. The attorney general, who has failed at his job miserably over and over again, let this be released. Questions that have nothing to do with the actual problem, with the thing that he's investigating. Now, had these questions led to another crime, that would have been different. Again, it's not bad that he asked these questions. It's bad that it's included in the report. Like, there's going to be boxes and boxes of information and the entire, transcript of the interviews with President Biden. Those weren't released. The report was. So it's very possible there are more questions in here we don't know about that made everything look good, bad, whatever, but the report has them included, which is the problem. Now, he was vice president from 2009 to 2016. I know this, and it was not me. And while you can argue that he was grieving and perhaps did not remember the exact date of his son's passing, he was off by several years, per the report. So you can be mad at me all you want. But I think you should have the year correct when your son died. Like, just the year. I don't care about the month. I get that shit, man. You could be like, I know it happened in the fall of 2018. What? I get it. I understand. I'm not a monster. But you should get the year right, man. Like, seriously. And again, we're not talking about an elderly man in his 80s. We're talking about the fucking president of the United States. He has to know certain things. He has to have a certain mental acuity about it. Now, he claims in his defense that he gave this interview the day after the October 7th terrorist attacks. First off, why? Why didn't your attorney general be like, "Dude, we can wait a few days. Can we just wait until next week? Push it aside? I don't care. This is where the lawyer steps in. Or where the fuck are Biden's lawyers who are like, "Sir, as your lawyer, fuck no, you're not doing this." Come on. Massive failure, up and down. This is ridiculous. But anyway, a lot of people are going to be putting, I think, too much weight on this press conference last night when he mixed up the president of Egypt with the president of Mexico. That does not bother me. People make mistakes all the time. What bothers me is Biden was baited into responding to rapid fire questions. He was not supposed to take questions last night. He was about to walk away from the podium, and the press started yelling shit at him. And then he turned to him like, I'm going to prove him wrong. And he fell into it. He was baited into responding to rapid fire questions from the press, and they were actively trying to get him to screw up. That's what they wanted. Now, the story isn't defiant president, exonerated. The story is report says president is feeble, confuses Egypt with Mexico. Now, whether the president has a mental problem or not is not the issue. If your goal is to win an election with literal democracy at stake, like you keep telling us, the perception is you're not in control of your faculties. The media is going to actively try and get you to screw up. They just did it last night. If there is a debate between Trump and Biden, both Trump and the moderators are going to try to get him to screw up. That's going to be their goal in life. Every single question aimed at him is going to be scrutinized and broken down and find the error. In 2020, he posed himself as the sane, rational, intelligent candidate against Trump's shit-talking, rambling, bombastic candidacy. He cannot do that now. There is no easy fix for this. The only way to fix this is for Biden to basically be interviewed constantly, daily, and never screw up between now and the election. He has to string across dozens of interviews and press conferences and display utter perfection. Any tiny slip-up will be amplified and used against him, and he's going to have to do all of this against a press that is actively now trying to get him to screw up. No journalist is going to let him go easily. Even the best and brightest of us will fall victim to making a mistake under such scrutiny and attacks. It's inevitable. Any president would make a verbal mistake. Obama would. Okay? It doesn't matter. They work extremely long hours, except for Trump. But, if you take the job seriously, you're probably getting 3 to 4 hours of sleep a night. And you're constantly just absorbing information. And then it's your job to take that information, calculate a response, and then communicate that information back to us and everyone else. I called President Biden's loss in 2024 inevitable the second Garland appointed a special counsel over those documents. At the time, I made that decision based on Garland handing Trumpers a perfect both sides argument. Because look, now they're both being investigated for documents. This is so much worse. It is a hole I don't think he, or honestly any president, can dig yourself out of. The perception is now he does not have his mental faculties. I already said, now he has to bat 1,000 between now and November, and that's not possible for any human being, let alone an 80-year-old. It's just not. Maybe if the polls were in his favor and the United States was poised to hand him a double-digit win against Trump, but that's not the case. He's already losing every battleground state. I think it was just this last weekend, there was a poll that said he's losing every battleground state to Trump. Not even close. It's not even 2 or 3 points. It's well beyond the margin of error. So he's already in this hole. He's losing every battleground race. His mental acuity and age are already his number one liabilities. That's almost impossible to disprove at this point. He's gone headfirst into supporting a genocide and is losing in Ukraine. Yes, the Republicans are involved, but that doesn't mean he's not the president while it's happening. If he were as universally unlikable as Clinton was, I'd say he has the deck stacked against him worse than any other presidential candidate ever has. I don't see a way out. I just don't.